Every time you stop by Bunnings, grab a cheap air fryer from Kmart, pick up school supplies at Officeworks, or fill a script at Priceline, you're not shopping at different stores, you're walking through different doors of the same company, Wesfarmers. It owns some of the most recognizable brands in the country, and it's quietly shaping the way Australians shop, live, and spend while collecting data on behavior, preferences, and purchases across nearly every corner of daily life. So how did it pull this off? Well, today we're tracing the rise of Wesfarmers from a small farmers co-op in the wheat belt to a corporate giant that runs everything from your weekend errands to your pharmacy visits. This is the invisible empire behind Australia's shopping habits. To understand where Wesfarmers is now, we've got to rewind way back, because this story starts in the dirt. In 1914, Australia, specifically Western Australia, feels like the edge of the world, wide, rugged, and barely developed. Infrastructure is minimal, distances are vast, and the farmers keeping the region running are doing it tough. They're isolated, undersupplied, and underpaid. Everything they need, like fertilizer, seed, fuel, and machinery, comes from suppliers who charge what they like. When it's time to sell their crops, they're forced to deal with middlemen and brokers who skim a generous cut for themselves. These are the people growing the nation's food, but the system is rigged against them. So they fight back. They form a co-op. A group of wheat growers in Western Australia formed Westralian Farmers Limited, a member-owned co-op designed to give them a fairer go. The idea was simple: pool resources, buy in bulk, and sell through their own channels. Cut out the middlemen and keep more value in the hands of the people doing the actual work. At first, the co-op offered the basics like fertilizers, fuel, and equipment. Then it expanded into storage, transport, and sales. But something interesting happened. Westralian farmers got efficient, incredibly efficient, moving goods across massive distances, building their own supply chains, managing transport and warehousing. They started mastering the stuff most companies struggle with, and as they grew, so did their reach. By the 1920s and 30s, they'd launched their own rural newspaper, they built massive wool stores to help growers get their products to market, and they even offered banking and insurance services for farmers when no one else would. Westralian Farmers was quietly constructing a full-scale economic system for rural Australia, and it all worked because it was grounded in necessity. For decades, Westralian farmers stayed true to that mission: cooperative, local, and purpose-driven. But the world didn't stand still. By the 1980s, the economy was changing, deregulation was in full swing, and globalization was reshaping industries. Capital was flowing faster than ever. Inside Australian farmers, leadership was beginning to feel the pressure. The cooperative model was honourable, but it was slow. Raising money was difficult, expanding into new markets took ages, and more importantly, the co-op couldn't easily compete with private firms scaling up with investor cash. So in 1984, they made a controversial decision. They demutualized. Westralian Farmers Limited officially ended its run as a co-op and became a publicly traded company, Wesfarmers Limited. Ownership passed from members to shareholders, and the company was now answerable to the stock market instead of the farming community. Once Wesfarmers was no longer bound by its cooperative roots, it started expanding fast. First, it leaned into heavy industry. It bought into energy production, fertilizer, manufacturing, insurance, and even coal mining. In the 90s and early 2000s, they owned massive mining operations, chemical plants, fertilizer factories, and even ran freight trains across the country. By the time the 2000s rolled out, Wesfarmers was thriving, and it was sitting on a pile of cash big enough to buy, well, almost anything it wanted. And in 2007, it made its most ambitious move yet. That year, Wesfarmers announced its plan to acquire the underperforming Coles Group for a jaw-dropping $19.3 billion. It was the largest corporate takeover in Australian history. Coles Group had in its portfolio brands like Coles Supermarkets, Kmart, Officeworks, and more. Wesfarmers swooping in for Coles Group meant that they now control all of the stable, high volume, and embedded in everyday Australian life brands associated with Coles Group, and Wesfarmers got to work immediately. The first thing they did was restructure. Each brand was given its own management, its own accountability, and its own performance targets. Wesfarmers' model relies on decentralization, letting each business run as if it were independent, but with back-end support from a shared corporate machine. One of the biggest transformations happened at Kmart, who, by the mid-2000s, was a mess. Stores were cluttered, the product mix was all over the place, and the pricing just felt random. It wasn't winning on price, quality, or experience, it was just sort of there. So Wesfarmers brought in new leadership, and it gave them a clear mandate: fix it or fold it. And fix it they did. At the center of the turnaround was Guy Rosso, the former McDonald's Australia CEO. He came into Kmart in 2008 and applied the same ruthless discipline and focus he'd used at Macca's. Rosso slashed thousands of underperforming product lines, eliminated most external brands, and told the buying team to stop chasing trends and start designing them. Under Rosso, Kmart got smarter and people noticed. What emerged was a totally new Kmart, one that felt cleaner, smarter, and surprisingly stylish for the price. Suddenly, $4 candles looked Instagrammable, $8 storage tubs were getting love, and Kmart became a sort of lifestyle, especially for students, families, and anyone trying to stretch $1 without looking like they were. But not every brand turned into a success story. Target was also part of the Coles deal. It had a rougher ride because while Kmart was reinventing itself as the new face of budget cool, Target felt stuck. It tried to position itself as a more refined, family-focused option that's slightly pricier, slightly more fashion-forward, but the execution never quite stuck. Its product lines were inconsistent, and prices hovered in that awkward, not low enough for bargain hunters, not premium enough for people chasing quality. Nobody seemed sure if it was an upscale Kmart or a discount Myer, not even Target itself. To be fair, Wesfarmers tried. They brought in new managers, they tried strategic repositioning, and they leaned into kids' clothes and homewares. But Kmart kept outperforming it in almost every metric. And worse, the two brands started cannibalizing each other. In many shopping centers, Kmart and Target were basically side by side, splitting foot traffic and diluting sales. So Wesfarmers made a call. In 2020, they announced a massive restructure. Dozens of Target stores would be shut down entirely. Dozens more would be converted into Kmart or K-Hub locations. By 2023, Target was a fraction of what it used to be. The red bullseye still existed, but it had clearly faded into the background. By 2025, Wesfarmers all but confirmed what everyone suspected. They weren't investing in reviving Target anymore. The future was Kmart. But there was another part of the 2007 Coles Group acquisition that stood out: the Coles Supermarkets itself. At the time, Coles was massive, a national grocery chain with hundreds of stores, millions of weekly customers, and one big problem: it wasn't working. The supply chains were sluggish, margins were razor thin, and operationally, it was lagging behind Woolworths in nearly every metric. Wesfarmers didn't come in with a lot of technical know-how when it comes to running a grocery store. They were miners and industrials. So taking over Australia's second biggest supermarket chain was a very bold bet. So they did what they do best. They broke the business down, rebuilt the supply systems, cleaned up the logistics, overhauled store layouts, and brought in new leadership. Most importantly, they gave Coles the time and capital to course correct without the quarterly pressure of short-term results. Over the next few years, Coles sharpened its pricing, restructured its distribution centers, and even started clawing back market share. The iconic Down Down campaign was part of that recovery, a brand overhaul to make Coles feel fresh, accessible, and distinctly different from Woolies. By the mid-2010s, Coles was stable and profitable. In 2018, they spun off Coles Group as a standalone, publicly traded company, returning it to the ASX and keeping only a small stake. It was a classic Wesfarmers play: acquire something undervalued, turn it around, and exit once the hard work was done. But Coles was just another piece of Wesfarmers' retail puzzle. Folded into that same 2007 acquisition was Officeworks, a brand that never needed reinvention or headlines. It quietly became the go-to for school supplies, office gear, tech, and furniture. While Kmart and Target wrestled with identity, Officeworks nailed consistency. It didn't dominate conversations, it simply dominated its category, becoming the first and last stop for Australian homes and businesses needing to get organised. But Wesfarmers' empire wasn't built on the Coles Group alone. Bunnings had already been in its portfolio since the 1990s. Originally a timber and hardware outfit, Bunnings evolved into a cultural mainstay, the beating heart of Australian DIY. It wasn't flashy or sleek, but it didn't have to be. Big warehouses, low prices, endless stock, and a sausage sizzle out front. By the 2020s, Bunnings wasn't competing, it was the default. Then came Catch, a more recent move and a different kind of play. Acquired in 2019, Catch wasn't brought in to rival Amazon, it was a digital sandbox, a place for Wesfarmers to test e-commerce, refine logistics, and learn how Australians shop online. While it never became a flagship brand, it served an equally important purpose: feeding the company's growing data machine with millions of digital touchpoints in real time. That said, by the mid-2020s, Wesfarmers had pulled off one of the most effective retail restructures in modern Australian history. But as strong as its retail game was becoming, Wesfarmers wasn't finished. Because while they'd conquered hardware, stationery, and homewares, there was still one market that offered even more growth: healthcare. In 2021, Wesfarmers announced it was acquiring Australian Pharmaceutical Industries, or API for short. API owned Priceline, sold patents and chemists, and a handful of pharmaceutical distribution networks. While it looked like an odd pivot, it makes perfect sense for Wesfarmers, because health isn't just a product category, it's a growth industry, an essential, high-frequency, high-margin market. People walk in with a need, and they come back regularly for the same things, whether it be for their prescriptions, their vitamins, or even their cosmetics. And when someone trusts you with their health, it's a different kind of loyalty altogether. Priceline alone had more than 470 stores and a built-in loyalty program with millions of members. Its brand was already strong, and unlike Kmart or Bunnings, Priceline dealt in needs. Purchases people make repeatedly and ones they're less likely to shop around for. That gave Wesfarmers something it hadn't fully tapped into before: deeply personal consumer behavior. Not just what people bought, but how often and why. And Wesfarmers saw an opportunity to build smarter stores. In 2022, they launched One Digital, a new division tasked with turning all customer data into something cohesive across their entire empire. One Digital's mission was to build a live, predictive model of consumer behavior. One that learns what you search, what you skip, what you browse online but buy in store. One that links a Priceline loyalty card to a Bunnings shopping habit. One Digital exists to turn millions of disconnected transactions into a single, unified profile, and to make it seamless for the customer, Wesfarmers introduced OnePass, a single loyalty program that links all its brands. It looks like a standard rewards program, but it basically functions as a key card to a closed-loop ecosystem. They hook you in with free shopping perks, early access to sales, and increasingly personalized offers that follow you across the entire Wesfarmers universe. Like when you're buying nappies at Kmart, you suddenly receive a Priceline offer for baby wipes. Or when you're ordering a heater from Catch, and a smart plug from Bunnings would randomly get recommended to you. Wesfarmers is trying to be the infrastructure behind your daily life. They don't need you to notice them. In fact, they prefer you don't. They want you to walk into a store, click on a site, scan a card, and go about your day, without ever thinking about the system that ties it all together. The result is a company that anchors in different industries. While other conglomerates compete for your attention, Wesfarmers wants to be your default option across multiple facets of your life. And if all of this sounds a little dystopian, that's understandable. Wesfarmers has built one of the most extensive, integrated consumer ecosystems in Australia, and they've done it without ever becoming a household name. Wesfarmers has pulled off one of the most successful and quietly executed corporate transformations in Australian history. But power doesn't come without pressure, and with a company this big, this connected, and this invisible, there are serious questions worth asking. Let's start with something simple: competition, or lack of it. In many sectors where Wesfarmers operates, they're the player. In hardware, Bunnings is basically a monopoly. It's where you go for a screwdriver, a lawnmower, and a bag of potting mix, and a sausage and bread. It's the default. In department stores, Kmart is the crown jewel, a minimal, ultra-affordable, and relentlessly optimized place that brings in loads of revenue for them. Then there's Officeworks, which has become so synonymous with school and office supplies that it's hard to name a serious competitor. Think about it. When was the last time you bought a printer or a stack of notebooks anywhere else? When one company becomes the default across multiple categories, the idea of competition starts to lose meaning. And all of that would still be a fairly traditional corporate story if it weren't for the data. Wesfarmers is now operating one of the most sophisticated behavioral data networks in Australia. It has a massive, unified digital ecosystem through One Digital and OnePass, which basically functions as a sprawling network of customer profiling, behavioral analytics, and predictive targeting, all based on everything from your shopping cart to your pharmacy purchases. They build live customer profiles that learn, predict, and adapt across every point of contact. Every click, every scan, every search, it's all logged, and that data gets connected, enriched, and cross-referenced. What you buy at Priceline could influence what you see at Kmart, and your Bunnings habits could inform your promotions at Catch. It's one of the most sophisticated data networks in the country, hiding in plain sight. Unlike Amazon or Meta, Wesfarmers doesn't feel like a data company. It doesn't wave the flag of big tech, and that makes it easy to overlook just how much it actually knows about you. The sheer scale of what you're opting into is rarely explained in plain language. Most people don't realize how integrated their data becomes across brands, or how persistent that profile is once created. Wesfarmers are quietly monetizing your behavior and building the back-end infrastructure to do it more precisely, more profitably, and more invisibly than most Australians realize. Which brings us to the company itself, the machine behind the curtain. Leadership is low profile, tightly managed, and relentlessly focused on execution. You could walk past Wesfarmers' entire executive team in the street and never know it. And that's by design. Wesfarmers has always preferred stealth to spectacle. They don't want you to think about them. They want you to think about Bunnings, Kmart, Priceline, about low prices, convenience, and normalcy. Wesfarmers is operating underneath, building systems, standardizing infrastructure, plugging into parts of your life you didn't even realize were part of the same network. So, what's the dark truth behind Wesfarmers? It's not a conspiracy, it's not a villain arc, it's not one of those companies you love to hate. It's something more complicated and arguably more impressive. Wesfarmers has built one of the most powerful, far-reaching and quietly integrated business empires in Australia. They did it not by pushing or promising to change the world, but by adapting, by quietly inserting itself into parts of your life you never thought to question. And that's the genius. You didn't have to choose Wesfarmers, you already did. When you topped up your rewards card, or when you bought that desk lamp, or when you scanned your script at Priceline, you were feeding the system. So next time you go to grab something from Kmart or queue up for a sausage at Bunnings, maybe pause just for a second and ask yourself, who really runs this place? Because chances are it's not the brand on the receipt, it's the name you don't see at all. But what do you think? Have you ever stopped mid-sausage sizzle at Bunnings and thought, wait, who actually owns all this? Have you walked through Kmart, Target, Officeworks, or Priceline without even realizing you were shopping under the same empire? Do you think Wesfarmers' kind of quiet control is harmless, or are we sleepwalking into a retail monopoly wrapped in good vibes and low prices? Let us know in the comments. We read every single one, even the AI voice accusation ones, and your insights help shape the next deep dive. If you've got something out of this video, give it a like, hit that subscribe button, and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. And as always guys, stay curious.